Andrew, welcome back to the show. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, of course, when Andrew Klavan comes out with a new book, you got to have him. So congrats on the book. I want to get to that in a minute. But obviously, as I said, it's in the show notes. People can order it, pre-order it. It comes out May 6th. We'll get into the details in just a minute. But it is kind of fitting on Good Friday to be talking about a book where we're talking about God, talking about the darkness and the good that's in it. So it's a very fitting time to be talking about this.
Yeah, I always remind people this is a day when you originally experienced it. The people who originally experienced it at a moment of absolute despair, and you should remember that in your moments of despair and darkness. The absolute failure of this movement that they had, that they thought was going to bring some kind of great revolution. They saw their leader crucified. They saw their people scattered. They themselves betrayed the man they loved the most. And yet there was actual hope on the horizon, right around the corner. An amazing thing to remember. As somebody who in my youth knew what despair was, it's an important thing to remember at all times.
All right, let's get back to that, because I do think you're right. Think about what Good Friday was such a moment of darkness for so many people to see their leader, and yet out of that darkness came this amazing moment. I don't think we fully appreciated what was happening then. It's funny though how much is talked about this, and obviously you're an expert on culture. You do this a lot on your show, but it was interesting at the Naval Academy this week was at the White House being honored by President Trump for winning the Commander-in-Chief trophy, the competition among the other service academies. And the president was noting that, Ohio State had just been there. The Dodgers had just been there. Obviously, I don't really care the Dodgers were there. I don't know what you think, but the point was, I thought about it in a different context, which was, it was almost like, it was cool again to be at the White House. When I was there and Trump won, it was, we're not going. We're protesting this. We're going to send a statement and we're going to do this. And now these teams want to be there. They want to be excited. And I don't know, maybe to the theme of your book, I'm looking for the light in the darkness here. But I thought, what a cultural shift.
Oh, it's an amazing cultural shift. Funnily enough, I knew at the minute Trump was elected. I remember I was standing at the Daily Wire and we were watching it, and everyone had told me this was going to go on for days. And I kept saying, I think he's going to win, the popular vote, and I think he's going to win tonight. But when it actually happened, I had this sense, oh, we won. And what I meant by that was not that Trump had won, though I was really happy that Trump had won. What I meant was that the media, which has been such a corrupt, such a disruptive, and such an anti-American force in our culture, had been defeated by the little armies of the internet, people like you, people like the Daily Wire, that we had managed to expose them lying so often in real time that what they called our conspiracy theories turned out to be true so often. And that the fact that the people who had the most authority had lied so relentlessly had finally reached the voters, so that here was this man, Donald Trump, that they had demonized in every possible way. They had shot at him. They convicted him of a crime that nobody could name. They had accused him of every possible atrocity. And yet the people said, yeah, we want that guy over, Joe Biden, who's obviously passed away. And so I think that the great triumph was a triumph of media, which has been, to me, the center of the problem. I mean, it's not just the news media, it's the entertainment media as well, pouring out this false idea of what this country is, what it has been, what it should be. And we beat it. And I think that that's an amazing thing. And I think that the minute that happened, I think everybody who was paying attention, especially the young, thought, oh, it's okay. It's not just me realizing that this is dishonest. It's a lot of people around me. And that's why, in spite of the fact that it was not that big an electoral victory, that's why this immense shift took place almost instantaneously. People dumping idiot ideas like DEI and defund the police, ideas that only a child could think would have any good effect on the country. Open borders, what an idiot idea this is, and suddenly it was all swept away because it had been held in place by a structure of condemnation, a social structure of condemnation that said, if you disagree with these things, you are the worst possible person. You're a racist, you're a fascist, you're a Nazi, you're Hitler, the whole thing. And suddenly all of that was shown, it was not just shown to be a lie, but it was shown that the guy next to you thought it was a lie too, which is just incredibly empowering. And so, yeah, this has been a tremendous moment. And I only hope that the good guys, the people who believe in freedom and who believe in constitutional governance and who believe in the greatness of this country, I hope the good guys marshal their forces and start to create a culture of their own that goes beyond commentary and negative attacks on them.
You know, as you're thinking, as you were speaking, I was starting to think about it. Like, these law firms are all caving, and they're saying, how much can we give you in pro bono services? Big business has largely caved, partially because people like Robbie Starbuck are out there fighting, partially because of Donald Trump's victory. But there's two institutions that I don't think have caved, Hollywood and the media. And I'm wondering if it's just that they're that dug in. Is it that they didn't get it? Is it, I mean, like, why of all of the institutions are they the two?
Well, I think,
or am I wrong? I mean, look, I want Andrew Klavan to give me this answer, but or am I just misreading that?
Well, Hollywood is on the brink. I mean, they're out of cash. Their movies their woke movies that they made no money, which was fine for a while as long as they were getting the social kickback that they wanted, the awards, the prestige, the interviews, the love. As long as they felt that they were getting that, they were fine because they'd make money overseas. But now I think it's been revealed that these movies don't make money and that we don't like them. Because remember, they were part of the media that was selling us that Donald Trump was Hitler as well. So I think that what is needed in Hollywood is competition. What is needed in Hollywood is people, creative people on the right, not right-wingers trying to be creative, but creative people who are traditionalists and faithful people and who believe in freedom, that they have to start making stuff. And they don't have to make movies for billions of dollars. They just have to make stuff that appears on the internet and captures the interest of the audience. I mean, what I would like to see is I would like to see a section of the internet turned into Greenwich Village in 1960 with artists showing up and showing their wares and attracting the young, because the young have got it. And if you start making good stuff and not propagandistic, stiff-minded, small-minded, this is conservative propaganda stuff, they'll show up and Hollywood will crumble. They will conform once that audience is created by the right. The news media is in a really interesting vice. They put forward, if you watch CNN or you read the New York Times, you have to be a left-winger to take that seriously. I mean, the New York Times is it's like, I read it for comedy at this point. You used to be able to read it for a kind of liberal point of view. Now it's just like a bunch of old ladies screaming in a burning building, it's Trump, Trump, Trump. And so there's nothing there, but the only people who are reading it are the kind of people who fall for it. And so if they are to start to say, you know what, maybe we got some stuff wrong, they're going to lose that audience. So they're stuck. So once again, I feel like the answer is competition, and the area where we need to compete, where we have fallen down. And again, I'm talking about everybody from the center right to the, intelligent further right. What we need is reporting power. The New York Times, a terrible, terrible newspaper, has more reporting power than probably all of the podcasts and internets and, daily wires put together. They have an immense amount of reporting power. You remember how with Sarah Palin, they basically parachuted like 50 reporters into her backyard to find some kind of dirt on her so they could destroy her. And we don't have the power yet to do that. And once we have reporting power, because we have a lot of people who want to give their opinions, which is great, but we also need people who can go on the scene, do what guys like Douglas Murray have been doing in Israel, and actually appear and come back and say, this is what I saw, this is who I interviewed. So in both cases, we have to depend on the new machinery, the new technology that allows us to reach people, but also make the stuff that needs to be made, namely entertainment and reporting. And I think we can do it. I think, look at the sea change that came over the left in its dealings with Elon Musk when he took over X. They're pretending that it's about Doge, but it's about X. The minute he said, I am going to let everybody speak, he went from being the darling of environmentalists right. to being, Snidely Whiplash, the most evil man in America. That's how much the left understands their control of the culture and what it means. And to take it back, we have to make it. We have to make culture. And culture is not just art. not just movies and storytellings, but it's also reporting. And so if we do it, if we seize the day, I think the day is ours for the next 25 to 50 years.
All right, I want to break that apart in two pieces. First, on your Hollywood comment, I had a buddy of mine several years ago who was a self-avowed liberal, but he was a business guy, a money guy, a film fund guy, and he approached what movies they would fund rather in Hollywood on a formula that he created. He was, as much as he was a liberal, he was a business guy at heart. And he had a formula, and he could tell by the script or whatever, the ticket, like whether it's going to do well. And he said to me something really funny, Andrew. He said, if you go look at the movies, and again, this is a guy self-described liberal. He said, look at Surfer Girl, that Bethany Hamill movie, and all these other movies that are Christian-leaning, right-leaning. They all make a boatload of money. And yet they won't ever get the funding. And so when you made these comments, I'm thinking to myself, there's two ways to address this. Either Hollywood ultimately changes its ways, or outlets like the Daily Wire get into the entertainment space. Is it one or the other or both?
Now, I think it's probably more that conservatives get into the entertainment space first. That's going to happen first. And again, it can't be conservatives who want to be artists. It's got to be artists who have a traditionalist bent or a faith-based bent. I was once sitting at a dinner table with the great Senator Ted Cruz, and Ted went around the table asking people, what do you know that other people don't know? And when he got to me, I said, what I know is in Hollywood, they don't care about money. And everybody says, oh, Hollywood is just about money. It's not. And right. the proof of this is Mel Gibson makes Passion of the Christ. He basically takes $25 million out of his wallet, and he makes this movie, and it makes $1 billion. It's one of the biggest hits in history. Clint Eastwood makes American Sniper after 20 anti-war on terror movies are made, and they all bomb, and his movie is a hit only because it shows the Americans are the good guys, which is true. When Mel Gibson made Passion of the Christ, virtually every studio started a faith-based division to pick up that money that was lying there on the ground. And yet when they made movies like Noah or the one about Moses, they went out of their way to offend the audience that would come to see them. So Noah was a movie about environmentalism instead of about sin and God. And Moses, Christian Bale came out and said, well, Moses was kind of a terrorist. And then when the movies bombed, they were like, well, I guess Bible movies aren't making any money. Because
like Snow White, though, they just blew up Snow White.
Exactly. So because talent has so much power, this wasn't true. This wouldn't have happened in the studio days, but the studios are gone. It's because the talent has so much power, and because talent gets a lot of prestige and a lot of awards and a lot of love from being leftist. Because of that, it's always going to shift to the left. Another good example is Law and Order, made by Dick Wolf, a Republican. Starts out for the first 2 years, it's conservative, but as the writers shift out of the writers' room and new writers come in, it becomes a completely leftist show. And so the power of talent is just so big that what you're going to have is you're going to have people who say, no, this is the script. This is what we're making. If this movie star doesn't want to make it, we'll find this guy and make him a star. But again, it has to be done by artists, not by political people. So that's the problem in Hollywood. That's why they're so dug in.
I'm so glad you brought up Law and Order. I loved that show forever. I mean, I literally, and now when you watch it, Olivia Benson's talking about, her whiteness and privilege and how she needs to atone for the sins, and criminals are just, I literally can't stand it anymore. And it's upsetting because you're right. Dick Wolf was a good Republican. When that show came out, I loved it. And they were like, let's figure out how to ruin it. But to the second point that you were making about the media, and this is what I find fascinating, Andrew. I did this speech down at Florida International University going back 6 months ago, maybe even longer, to the journalism school. And one of the students said to me, what do you think about the decline of journalism? And I said, well, with all due respect, it's not declining, it's flourishing. And they said, what do you mean? I go look at Substack. These journalists who don't want to be part of Bari Weiss, even some leftists who didn't want to be part of newsrooms anymore went and are now making a boatload of money, creating a newsletter where they are reporting, they're hiring other journalists, but they're not adhering to, the left bent of the New York Times, maybe, if you will. And so to your point about that, do you think that that's where the future is? Like, it's just more independent journalists creating and then building a model where it's, hey, give me $7 a month or $10 a month, and I will make it an independent journalist effort here that's independent of the New York Times or the Washington Post?
Yes. The short answer is yes. That is where I think the future is. Ultimately, I suspect those sites will build up like Barry's site has built up. Free Press has become virtually a newspaper. And she is she's a liberal person, but she obviously likes to hear different points of view, which is refreshing. And yes, that is exactly what I think will happen. And that's what I think will happen in the arts too. I mean, we're really a few years away from somebody with a credit card and an imagination being able to make a movie on his own. I mean, with AI, it's going to take out so many of the costs of special effects and locations and all these things. And soon you'll be able to make a movie virtually by yourself because you'll be able to bring in voice, create voices and create faces and all kinds of things. And I believe that is the future. These things have become so corporate, and the corporations were then taken over by the leftist talent. So basically the inmates are running the asylum, and that has got to change. And look, there's this idea that goes around that conservatives are not creative. I believe that to be largely false. There's a certain amount of truth to it when it comes to conservative businessmen. A conservative businessman would much rather invest his money in an oil well than in a movie. And, it's because he has common sense. He's going to make more money off the oil well than the movie. But a leftist says, give me that influence, give me that power, give me that voice into the culture, and then buys a movie studio. And that's a big difference between us. But conservatives have been blacklisted. I know. I had a big income in Hollywood, and I lost it the minute I opened my mouth. It went from a large income to zero almost overnight. So there's nobody waiting outside the door, just in the same way when they finally let blacks in to be managers in baseball teams. There were no managers available. And I remember a broadcaster losing his job because he said, well, I just don't think blacks can do the job of being a manager. Well, no, when you keep people out for 100 years and you open the door, nobody's waiting out there for you to be nice to them. You have to let them, you have to understand that they are welcome in. Once those venues open up, I believe the conservatives, and again, it doesn't have to be conservatives. It just has to be people who tell the truth. Any story that's true will be a conservative story. I mean, that's just the fact. Any story that is not a lie will ultimately have some conservative idea in it, because that's all conservatism is realism.
What about a movie about oil wells? That would be the combination. So if you got the conservatives just to make movies about oil wells, then it's a win-win, right? I mean, you combine their desire.
Yeah. No, movies that are never made are movies in which a woman would like to be a homemaker and a mother. Movie in which the business guy is the right guy. The last movie like that was Ghostbusters, a fantastic movie in which nobody remembers, but the villain is the EPA.
But look at like Angel Studios. Like you talk about Cabrini, a strong woman who goes out there and founds an order, of sisters that does so much good, and yet that wasn't picked up by the studios. Angel Studios is doing a lot of this work, having massive success, but it's almost like they can't portray a woman doing conservative things because it undermines the theory that men are bad, that women can't just do independently good stuff. But I love so many of the films that Angel is putting out. And they clearly are successful at doing it. And by the way, their model is, we'll crowdsource this so we know it's got an audience. It's a beautiful model and great movies that come out of it. And I think this is, and they're making a boatload of cash.
What Angel did that really was a game changer was they created an alternative method of distribution. That's the bottleneck, is distribution. Because like I said, virtually anybody can make a movie if you have a credit card and some talent, but to get it out there, to make sure people see it, is still a very difficult thing to do. It's difficult in the publishing industry now, where basically if you're a white male, it's very hard to get your book sold. And you can publish something beautifully by yourself, but it's hard to get that distribution method out there unless you already have a big audience and can use that audience. So that's what Angel Studios did. They made that wonderful movie Sound of Freedom. They distributed it in an absolutely new way, and that really did change the game, and people have to imitate that.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.